everybody. Okay, got it. Okay. You can see how many things this poor man has to deal with, and that is exactly what a college student is like. You have not just one thing and not two things or three things, but you have all your classes, and most of life doesn't stop while you're trying to do assignments. So let's talk about how to get through this gracefully and happily. All right, so pressure, pressure, pressure. I think especially when you're a graduate student, there are so many pressures and so many different parts of life that need to be dealt with. Not only from instructors, or if you are a graduate teacher, assistant, or GTA, it's all about competition, isn't it? It's all about trying to do your best, but also competing with fellow students and working on projects and trying to prove ourselves, basically. So what do we do about it? College equals evaluation equals anxiety. So the trick is to not avoid it, but to actually own it. Kind of get a feeling of adventure, get a feeling of this is something I want to do. I'm looking to the future, but I also have to deal with the present. So what needs your immediate attention? Don't worry about the things that aren't needing to be worried about yet. Resolving problems. A lot of times when we think of our problems, we think of all of them all at once, and it's almost impossible to do anything about. Our minds actually become overloaded. It's almost like a manufacturing plant that we've tried to stuff too many things into the machinery, and it just gets stuck. So which ones consume a lot of physical, emotional, or mental energy? Do I need to deal with those first, or do I need to deal with all the little ones that are distracting me and then deal with those big ones? Part of this is figuring out how you work best. Adjusting to change is challenging, but life is all about change. We'll find out a little bit more about that later. And then addressing the uncertainty, the frustrations, and the distractions with confidence. You have probably overcome many, many things to get to this point in your journey of education, and you've done well. Whether you think so or not, you're here and you're still trying to make a difference. It's all about perspective. I don't know if you can see this. I think I might have gotten it a little bit too blown up where it's fuzzy, but here's this student who's come to talk to his professor, and the professor says, I finally read the paper draft you sent me. Isn't that how it is? Sometimes it's so hard to get assignments turned back to the students. And if you're a GTA, you've understood what the pressures are. But then you get into this. He says, I finally read the paper draft you sent me, and it's not bad. Well, is it good? Well, it's not good. Sometimes we get these ambiguous answers to or the questions in our life and in our education. And what do we do about that? What is the perspective that we take? We want the professor's approval. We want our fellow students' approval, but sometimes they're coming from a different place. Maybe we need to figure out how we can change it. So Maslow has this pyramid of self-actualization, and it talks about first we need to figure out our physiological needs, which are the warmth, the water, food, rest. If you don't have those, it's really necessary to pay attention to those. This is where self-care starts. We start with our basic needs. We have a food pantry on campus. We have the care team to help you get through things. You have other resources that we can help you find, or other people can on campus. The safety needs, not only is that security or actual safety, but feeling safe in your environment, feeling safe where you have people to work with that you can trust and work with. And then the belonging and love needs. We need friends. We need socialization. Those are really important. Sometimes when you're overwhelmed with educational needs, they take precedence. But we're going to talk here really quickly about, or not really quickly, but in this session, about how you can fill those. And the esteem needs, sometimes they're at the top of the pyramid, but sometimes they take over our lives because we need to show that we're here because we belong here, because we have qualified to be here. But we also are trying to prove that we can go out and get a job. We're trying to prove to our peers and ourselves and other people, professors especially. So what is self-actualization actually? Let's talk about that. Self-actualization is where we finally feel like we're in the right place, basically at the right time. That's very simplified. But characteristics of self-actualized people, they're self-accepting. I might have some faults, but I also have all these strengths. I am not sure I know everything about this subject, but I know a lot. You have spent a lot of time studying and learning and experiencing. So people who are self-actualized, they're autonomous. If I don't get the answers I need, I can look it up. I can go to YouTube videos, or I can go other sources and find what I need, or two other sources. They enjoy solitude and privacy. Why would that be important? Basically, it's because when you can sit in silence, be solitary for a minute or two, or a little bit more, hopefully, you can actually think. It gives your brain a chance to do something that it's brilliant at, which is problem solving. They can be open and spontaneous because they're not so rigidly trying to, or a person, not they, but we can be open and spontaneous because we're not trying so hard for concrete things, but we can see laterally or think laterally, and we can see the options. Realistic, yes, we have to be realistic, especially in time management. I think a lot of students are time optimists, and that doesn't serve us well because we think we have more time than we do to do something. Responsible, always, but enjoy the journey, not the destination. If we are always looking at the graduation or the dissertation or something, we're missing the moments of learning along the way. So one can choose to go back towards safety or forward toward growth. And growth can be uncomfortable, but growth must be chosen again and again, and fear must be overcome again and again. That's Maslow. So within all of us, we have certain coping resources. We have hopefully learned how to be assertive. We can teach you that in counseling. Intelligence, of course, you've got that. Sensitivity, most people are working on that, especially if you're in, doctors, going to be a doctor. They have to take sensitivity training now. A sense of humor will serve you very well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Time management skills, organizational ability, energy, creativity, ability to seek out and accept help from others. Sometimes when we're trying to be perfect, trying to show that we belong, we have a tendency not to ask for help, but you're missing out on a great resource. Because if we had to learn everything ourselves, we'd still be working on the wheel, trying to find the better wheel to do something with. And then perseverance and self-care. So create your own personalized self-care plan. We are unique in so many ways. We are similar in so many ways, but one of the things that we are unique in is that the same thing that helps someone else might not help us. When I am teaching someone how to deep breathe, I recognize that some people, it makes them more anxious. So you have to switch that coping skill to reduce anxiety. Some people can do yoga. Some people, it drives them crazy, and they do better with Tai Chi or something else like that. Running, Some people love running, other people, they wouldn't, no, doesn't help, right? So we have to personalize our own self-care plan. Self-care means taking responsibility for yourself in order to maintain a healthy and balanced lifestyle. That comes through individually figuring out what activities help and what don't. Some people love socialization. It energizes them. They have more energy after they've been around people. And then there's some other people who, when they're around people, it kind of zaps their energy. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just two different types of people. So figure out who you are, what things help you. This might be you, or this is probably not something really good. Don't isolate yourself. Don't find your moments of just that individual thing, but does it seem like they're worried a little bit? How effective are you depleted? Just like a capacitor that has different levels of energy storage or energy storage capabilities, sorry. But can I study and study and study and get good grades? I know some people who study all the time and their grades just never come up to where they want. I promise you, they're studying too hard. What happens to the brain is it gets fatigued. Our brains take about 46 to 49% of our calorie intake a day just to function as the brain. That's not the body. And so they've done some interesting studies on how to help people work harder, longer, smarter, more effectively, efficiently. Pomodoro technique, that's a really good technique. You can find free help online. Don't pay for it. But they came out with a new study last year. They had been working on this study for a while. And this study is saying that if you work on a subject for 55 minutes to an hour and concentrate on that, and then switch to another subject or another thing, work on that for an hour, and then switch back to the first one, it might drive you a little crazy, but they're saying that you can work much more efficiently and not find yourself becoming fatigued. There is something about the brain that gets bored and it gets tired. And if you can switch back and forth, you will find that you have increased ability to think, process, store information with easier retrieval. And so don't let your batteries run down. Don't let that happen to you. And self-care is part of that priority. It's really hard to think if you're tired. It's really hard to think if you have not been eating properly. So part of self-care is taking care of the body, making sure that that battery stays charged. And we're not robots, but even robots need to be put on a charging station and fixed every once in a while. So make sure that self-care is important. So one of those is getting outdoors, that vitamin D, fresh air, fresh oxygen, taking time to relax a little bit, rejuvenate yourself. So move. We know that one of the keys to optimum health and optimum mental ability is movement. Movement is always positive, physically and psychologically. So it doesn't matter what you choose. There's so many different things, and I didn't have room to put them all up here, but find ways to be more physically active, and then laugh. Jeff Justice said, I believe that when God designed us, he included a valve for dealing with stress, and that's our sense of humor. If you can learn to look at the lighter moments or to find ways to see humor around you, and I don't mean pointed humor, I don't believe in that, but that funny moment, it's really good to laugh. Enjoy it. Share it with your friends. They just came out with a study. I don't know if you saw it last week. they came out with a study that said dad humor is really good for us. It helps us not be embarrassed. It helps us to be able to be more resilient and flexible when things happen to us that we're a little bit embarrassed about. So dad humor is good. I will share one of the ones I liked in that article. They were talking about the science of humor and everything, but they were also talking about some of the dad jokes. And this one was, I think my bank really, really likes me. They keep sending me letters talking about my outstanding balance. Kind of corny, right? Kind of silly, but if you can say those jokes and not be embarrassed, but just own it, that it's kind of a dumb joke, but funny, laughter goes a long way. And then trying to quiet your mind from all the stresses and anxieties and worries and fears. What happens if you can't keep your mind quiet? Everybody talks about meditation. So here's this person this figure meditating. I feel peace. I feel calm. I feel a hole in my sock. We can't really clear our mind of everything. It's not going to happen. Our minds are active. Our subconscious, our conscious are always trying to problem solve, always trying to think things through. Part of meditation is just trying to calm it down so you can actually think. Deep breathing so you can think. Getting rid of stress and anxiety so you can think and process and plan. And so take a moment to breathe. Just be in the moment, not be afraid. And part of that is visualization, the power of positive thinking. Instead of, I can't do it, this is too much for me, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not going to make it, you start telling yourself the positive things. We get 69, I start counting and multiplying and all that math stuff, but I think it's like 69,000+ thoughts a day. Some don't matter. It's like, that's color green, or this is what I want to eat. But within all the thoughts we have, why do we hold on to the negative ones? Almost like a chokehold. We're not going to let them go. And we let all the positive, neutral thoughts float away. Do the same thing, that visualization. This is possible. They've given me this assignment to make this huge thing happen, and I'm struggling with it. But instead of that, think about, this is awesome. Look how much I'm learning. Look how much I'm growing, changing, and ask friends for help. How do I do this? Have you done this before? How can I make this better? That collaboration with people. And I love this by Christy Martin. When your world moves too fast and you lose yourself in the chaos, introduce yourself to each color of the sunset, or leaves, or flowers, or whatever the senses are taking in at the moment. Reacquaint yourself with the earth beneath your feet. Thank the air that surrounds you with every breath you take. Find yourself in the appreciation of life. That's that power of positive thinking. And they did a mega study in 2022. They took 40 other studies and they combined those studies and tried to figure out gratitude, the power of positive thinking. And they found that gratitude, all by itself, nothing else changed in these people's lives, changed 42 things in their lives. It helped them socially, emotionally. It helped them with business endeavors. It helped them with educational endeavors. It changed all these areas. And especially the one that helped most was the dramatic ones that had the highest percentages were health related. There is an actual illness that is heartbroken illness, and it changes the signals to the brain and the body about the feel-good hormones and everything. And so we need to really pay attention to the holistic kind of idea of us, the 7 areas of our life that we should be engaged in and promoting. And self-care is a huge one of those. Relaxation. It takes many forms. We've been talking about kind of meditation, breathing. Meditation is not about feeling a certain way. We're not trying to make you feel something. It's about feeling the way you feel. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm happy. I'm sad. And then now that I'm feeling it, acknowledging it, owning it, what do I want to do about it? It's okay to feel angry, not okay to act on it, except act. How do I get rid of it? How do I let it go? Meditation is not spacing out or running away. In fact, it is about being totally honest with ourselves. What does that mean? It means finding that centeredness within us. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of not finding a job. Whatever the fears are, don't hide from it. Don't shut it down. Because what happens when someone says, distract yourself? I know you're worried, but just find a distraction. Actually, what you've done to yourself is put yourself down. You have kind of abandoned yourself, because in reality, what you're saying by distracting is you're not strong enough. You're not capable enough. You're not going to make it. And that's not true. I know for a fact that you are here. You've gotten this far because you are capable. You might be exhausted or tired or struggling, but you are capable and you can work through things. That's the brilliance of our minds, of who we are as people. We are survivors, and we don't like this. We've never been in a pandemic before, but history shows that we can get through it. We can thrive. So the goal of meditation, or that journey of self-awareness, insight, is not to get rid of thoughts or emotions. A human being can experience 190 emotions. I think that was from a study from Stanford University, or a professor from there. The goal is to become more aware of your thoughts and emotions and learn how to move through them without getting stuck. We don't want to get stuck. So the change plan, if I want something to change, what do I do about it? First, I have to realize what changes I want to make. I don't just let life come at me and I'm reactionary, but I want to be actively engaged in making changes. So ask yourself, the most important reasons why I want to make these changes are, and what are those? The steps you plan to take, what can I take? And maybe that's where you pull people in and say, hey, what do you think I could do? And then you let stick what fits you and let all the other stuff disappear. The ways others can help, what can they do? I will know if my change plan is working if. That's how I know, because things are changing. Things are getting better. I'm getting better. I feel better. And then some things that might interfere with my plan. A lot of times things come up unexpectedly, like COVID. That probably interfered with everyone's plans, right? But what can I do to get past those? What are the things I can change? Our minds and our bodies do not like change. It fights it. It's trying to survive, and the only way it knows is present-based stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean that change is bad. Change might be wonderful. So Sidney Harris says, our dilemma is that we hate change and love it at the same time. What we really want is for things to remain the same, but to get better. And just for fun, because we're doing humor, change is inevitable, except from the vending machine. Oops, sorry. And that's it. So I thought I'd open the rest of the part up for questions if anybody has questions, or if I didn't address something that was important to you. I don't know if someone can do that for me, or if there were any questions. Or I can talk about time management too.
Sure. Would you please talk about time management and procrastination? I think
Okay.
a lot of us struggle with that.
So The interesting thing about perfectionism, we're trying to be perfect and trying to produce what we think people want so we can get those A's, so we can get the jobs after graduation. The interesting thing about perfectionism, it causes procrastination. I'm waiting for the perfect time, the perfect place, the perfect feeling. And we've found through studies that motivation does not come until we actually sit down and start something, and then the motivation kicks in. So how do you overcome that? It's by time management. It's making plans with yourself. We are so good about making dates with other people or following through when we have to be in class or we have a responsibility. But then when it comes to us, we kind of have that habitual self-abandonment. We put ourselves last in a way. And so the secret to change, or the secret of change, is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but building the new. I am a little worried about doing this project because it takes so much time. But if I can break it down into pieces, make arrangements to meet with myself every day, that's a huge benefit. There was a man who became a great pianist and an author. He wrote about 3 or 4 books, but I'm sorry, remember his name at the moment, but he lived back east. And when he was a kid, he was put into piano lessons, and he tried really hard to get 2 hours at least of piano practice in a day. But he was in sports and he was going to school. And one day he went to his piano lesson, and his piano teacher said, how many hours, how long do you study a day? And he said, well, I try to do like 45 minutes to an hour before I go to school, and I try to do an hour when I get home, and if I have time, I try to get another hour in. She said, do not do that. As you get older, you will not have those large amounts of time as a general rule, because you'll have so many other responsibilities. She told him that he needed to take 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes to do what he needed to do. So he took that to heart. And when he was on the bus or on the train going back and forth to work, which probably took about 30 minutes, he would write his books. And that's how he wrote his books. When he was practicing, he would do 15 minutes, and then he would do 30 minutes, and then he would do another 20, whatever fit into his schedule. And I think if you do that, kind of like the dovetailing that they do in woodworking to build stronger joins, that it makes your life easier. When you have 15 minutes and that's all you have, our tendency is to say, oh my gosh, I only have 15 or 20 minutes. I don't have time to do anything really. But if we take those 15 minutes, you can look up a couple resources. You can look up, or you can type a few, like a bibliography in about, depending on how fast a typer you are. But if I have 15 minutes, I can look over a research paper. I might not read the whole thing, but at least I can get the gist of it. And when you're reading a huge amount of work, it's so much easier if you read the introduction, the middle part, and then the conclusion, because basically a paper or a research paper is, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I tell you it, and then I'm going to tell you what the conclusions are, what I told you. And if you do that, you can go through a large amount of research very quickly, and then you know what's going to help you with what you're studying and what you are wanting to do, or you don't have to use it. And then you go back when you have a little more time and you read it more thoroughly to figure out what the graphs or what the diagrams are saying, and what their results really meant with percentages and everything. So part of working smarter is not working harder. It is figuring out how to do things. Big business basically are the ones that drive research on how to help employees work harder and smarter. And they have kind of a tongue-in-cheek, kind of humorous thing in a way. And in another way, it's not humorous at all, but they say, hire a lazy person first, and they will teach you all the ways to streamline every production part. And then you fire them and hire someone who can work because you've already figured out the best, most efficient way to do it. So think about yourself. What can I do while I'm waiting for something else to happen? What can I do? And one semester, this is just an example. One semester in my undergrad, I took 21 hours in that semester, but I wanted to get A's, and I would never do it again, and I didn't do it again, but I was trying to like catch up, go ahead and stuff. And I did end up making all A's, but I had to be very, very time conscious. Sometimes we allow ourselves to maybe be time optimists. Oh, I can do this and I can do this. And sometimes you have to give up something, but don't ever feel like you can't do self-care. That is so important. If you figure out that you need 7 hours of sleep a night, get that 7 hours. We cannot function if we're tired and our brain is just not working. So the Pomodoro technique is brilliant because you work 25 minutes and 5 minutes off. That 5 minutes actually is very beneficial for the brain. The 25 minutes amount of knowledge that you've tried to stuff into your brain, it actually takes that 5 minutes to catalog it and categorize it. So there's easier memory, recall, and there's also easier retrieval for the brain. And then you go back to task, and they say on the Pomodoro technique, only do that for 3 hours in a row. So 25 minutes, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, and do that. I think that's right. I could be wrong on that. But did that answer your question, or did I get sidetracked?
Oh, yeah, it does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Does anyone else have a question or something that they've been struggling with? I guess not. I know this is a little short. There's Dr. Asadi. He's counseling center
Hello, good job. I was
director.
listening along. Thank you. I got some tidbits too.
Oh, good.
Can I ask a question? Oh, well, I'll let Carolyn. Yeah, afterwards, if you want to stay on, Carolyn can. I'm sure she can help with that. But have you had a chance to promote the walk to everyone?
Oh, not yet. I was gonna towards kind of the end to help them remember, because we usually remember the last things we've heard, not the first things. But we do have a suicide prevention walk coming up this Sunday, and they're going to meet here, right in front of the library, or where?
In front of the library.
Okay. And it starts at 12.
The registration starts at 12, but they can come a little earlier because there'll be pancakes and stuff like that. So we'd love to have y'all.
Yeah, and spread the word. It would be nice. We have a movement Monday every week. We meet in front of the bookstore and walk around campus. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to get that outdoor exercise and not to feel like you have to do it alone. We also have a mindfulness presentation that one of our people in our center do. It's on Mondays at, hold on, I gotta look at my calendar so I don't steer you wrong, but hold on, let me get there. Okay, so 9 to 9:30 on Monday mornings. It's just a Zoom thing. You can access that from our counseling center services center website. And then she also does it on Thursdays at 12, from 12 to 12:30. So were there any more questions? I'm trying to think. You asked me another question, Emerald, and I don't remember. It was kind of that perfection. It wasn't perfectionism, was it?
It was procrastination. I believe
Procrastination.
Syed has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, Syed, would you please go ahead
Yes,
with your question?
it is somewhat about my personal circumstances. So can I talk to Carolyn in, when no one other is over here? Just a moment. I want to talk to Miss Caroline in person, not.
Oh,
while
okay.
everyone is-
And just a note, the Counseling Services Center, we're located on the bottom floor of the Student Services Center in room 118. You are welcome to make appointments. And
Yes, I have been there and it was very helpful.
okay,
And I think that I uh, don't need more services about that because I feel I am fully recovered.
oh, okay,
Yes, but if I can ask some personal question about myself in when
Okay.
When the workshop finishes.
okay.
Mhm.
And I just thought of something. I work a lot with how the brain works, how we are actually wired. And it's a kind of a fascinating thing. I don't know if we'll ever know all the answers, but when we are little, we are learning our words, our numbers, our colors, we're learning language, we're learning all
Mhm.
these things. And our brain is meant to help us remember. So let's say I'm trying to figure out the letter A, what it sounds like, how to write it, what it looks like, you know, capital A, small a, lowercase a, all the terms. Every time you think of something, our brain wraps around that neural connection, it wraps a thing called the myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath, every time you see an A or hear an A or talk about an A, it wraps that sheath tighter and thicker. And so now it's lightning. When you look at an A, you know it stands for alligator, aardvark, and you know what it sounds like. You don't even really have to think about it anymore. But the problem is that it does that for other things in our life. So it will wrap that myelin sheath around experiences. And if they're negative thoughts, it's there, but it wraps it tighter and thicker and it's quicker. So the minute something anxiety producing or fear producing, and they're kind of on the same pathway in the brain, it's like lightning speed. And so part of change is changing the connections in the brain, which if you're active, you create more connections in the brain. So when I am inactive and thinking negative thoughts, I am creating a kind of perfect storm where negativity now becomes my go-to thought, fear, worry, anxiety, stress. And so part of counseling or part of just figuring out how to make changes in our lives is changing those connections. Another thing is that the world around us is so complicated right now. A lot of political unrest. I think we had 47 wars in the world last year. We had 100 and something volcanoes. There's just so many things going on. I could have that number wrong, but it's somewhere like this crazy number. And just the shootings and the violence. And so we have to be careful to keep that power of positive thinking in the forefront of our mind, where it's the thinking, reasoning part of our mind, so that we don't get stuck in the reactionary part of us, which is the stress, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the other things that cause us to be hyper alert. And that's exhausting for the body. So when we're talking about thinking, we want to keep in the forefront of our mind and not go to the fight or flight or the freeze. And that's where anxiety and fear lie. So just a note to throw out there. That's why we promote self-care so much, because that calms the body down. The body, let me back up. Your mind cannot calm down by just telling it to. Like, let's say you're anxious about something or fretting about something, and you're trying to say, just calm down, it'll be okay. You can't do that unless the body is relaxed. And that's why we focus a lot on things that actually help the body relax. So sending those signals back up to the amygdala, the hippocampus, or the whatever that other one is, but those parts of the brain that keep talking to each other, the frontal lobe, the cortex, and everything. So work with your brains, work with your bodies, and make those two connections, because they are always talking to each other, the conscious, the subconscious, and the body, the physiological responses. And that might help you figure out what's best for you too. What calms me down the most? I don't know. It's different for everybody. Any other questions? So Emerald, do you want to, any other questions or thoughts from what you know about the students that you serve and help?
I think a lot of students also struggle from financial anxiety.
That is huge, because like the Maslow's pyramid, if you don't have that financial security at the bottom, it's hard to think about anything else. If you're hungry, or if you don't know where you're going to be living in the next month, or there's so many aspects to financial security, but hopefully everyone knows about the care team. They have money that if you need something, they can help you a little bit with. I would be very proactive if you're looking for scholarships or something. There's not many out there for graduate students, but there are some. And I know money gets left on the table every year because people don't ask. So see if you can find those. There's some really odd kind of scholarships that you can get. You might be able to find something that fits you. One was a Turkey scholarship. I'm not quite sure what you had to do to qualify for that, but it was, every little bit helps. Food pantry, we have a food pantry on campus that can help. If you want to spend your money on something else and need a little bit of help with food, I would go there. They're very nice. You get, they help you fill out a form, and life is so expensive now. It's, hopefully everybody knows that. I know I didn't finish that sentence, but I'm moving on. Hopefully everybody knows that little circle that you get on your ID tag, that is for the bus, that you can ride the bus anywhere, anytime, free around Little Rock, if that would save you some money or some transportation costs. So find ways to help your finances stretch a little bit more. I know it's hard, but there's another thing. I don't know if you know about ONET, ONET, but I really like that site. Just type in ONET and it'll bring up this government site that has more information than you will ever know what to do with. But you put in something you're interested in, it will tell you what jobs, what you need for each job, what you'll be doing. And then at the bottom, towards the bottom, it'll tell you how much money you can earn in Arkansas or in other states, every 50 state of the United States. It will show you internships that are available, apprenticeships that are available. And most of the ones I've looked at this month, they've all been updated in 2023. So they're really close to what you'll find reality wise. They also have a place down at the bottom of each section where it will tell you what jobs are available. So if you're looking for like summer jobs or a job just to help you get through school, look on there. They have a lot of choices and they're all up to date. Indeed.com, sometimes they're out of date, or that they don't answer, or the people don't even know that, the businesses don't even know that they've been put on Indeed. So I'm not sure how Indeed gets their information, but So ONET is a really good resource for financial, like looking at the future, trying to find jobs. And I just looked up a financial one for somebody today, and it was from 2023. It had been updated, and there were so many financial jobs in Little Rock that kind of be creative with that.
Do you have any quick tips to overcome procrastination?
I do. One thing is to get engaged in what you're procrastinating about. I had a student come to me, this was quite a while ago, and they were struggling. They were putting off doing this paper because they just felt out of depth or something. And I said, well, what is your paper on? And they said, well, it's geology and stuff. I said, well, I can probably help you. Thinking I can, because not that I know what you're going to talk to about, but I know how to research. I know how to get excited about stuff and interested in things. And so they said, well, it's ooids. And I said, well, did you just make that term up? I've never heard of that before. And they said, no, they're these little geological formations. And I said, well, let me do a little research and I'll get back to you and help you with that paper. And I don't write papers for people, but I can tell you how to get past the roadblocks and what kind of direction would help you to be able to finish it. So I did some research and they came back and I said, well, okay, so basically a paper, or this is what this is. And so they said, well, I can only talk about ooids so much. I said, well, you talk about the regular ooids and then you talk about giant ooids. And they said, well, there are no such things as giant ooids. And I said, oh, yes, there are. So they didn't believe me. So we looked it up. And while looking it up, they got to see, like when you cut an ooid, I don't know if you know what it is. It's a calcite formation, but if you cut it in half, it looks like a jawbreaker. It's got all these little fine rings of colors and everything. It looks like it's really pretty. And there are giant ooids and the little teeny ones, and most of them are the little, couple millimeters across. So I think part of procrastination is feeling like it's too big of a thing to learn. But if you get excited about learning, there is so much in this world to learn. And if you have that belief that you can learn, that you can conquer it. And I love the spirit of adventure. I like thinking that, how am I going to do this? And I remember having to do a paper in my undergrad, and it was on aliquots. I'd never even heard of aliquots before. I still to this day am not quite sure I know what they are. I know they're how you measure how many things are in pine trees or whatever. I know I talk stupid sometimes, but I'm going to own it. But I got excited about it and how forestry works. That is so out of my wheelhouse, is what we call it. I mean, I'm actually in mental health and everything, but I enjoy it. I think procrastination is when we fear something. And if you can figure out why you're procrastinating, I think you can address it. And like I said before, motivation does not come by waiting for it to come, waiting for that right moment. When you sit down in front of a computer, that's when the motivation comes. So I have edited some books for authors. And in talking to authors, most of them will tell you that they get their work done by planning a time for themselves each day to sit down in front of the computer. So every day they sit down to write. Some write by hand or old-fashioned typewriters because that's their kind of mojo kind of thing. But if you will make yourself start, everything will kick in. It's almost like waiting till the last minute and you're thinking, oh my gosh, the paper's due in 2 days or a day. What happens is adrenaline kicks in and you get it done. But the problem is, if you'd have started earlier, the same thing would have happened, that brilliant process of the mind will have kicked in and you will be able to do much better, quicker. I'm a big one on research. I do a lot of reading of research papers and everything. And what I've found is if you are doing a bunch of different assignments, you will come across things and the tendency is to put it off. Oh, that would be great for that paper, but I'm not working on that paper right now. But when we want to come back to it, we've either forgotten it or we don't know where we found it. And it's so much easier to just have like a research log and say, okay, this is for this paper, this is this, and this is this assignment. And as I just going through daily whatever, I start plugging those things in. And when you actually get to the point where you're needing to do the job or that assignment, you already have most of it done. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Thank you.
Okay. And part of it is just making yourself do it. I cannot go to bed tonight without having this done. I cannot eat lunch until I have 30 minutes of research done, or whatever the thing is. If you're in a lab, I have to finish this part of the lab before I come. And those are kind of natural things. But if you do that with everything, it works really better.
But why is it sometimes so challenging to just get started?
It is that crazy perfectionism. It is the worry in the back of our minds that we're not going to have enough time. We're not going to be able to do one more thing because we're tired, we're exhausted. We've had so many other things coming at us. And I do think we're waiting for a perfect moment. And in life, those are very, very far and few between. And I think if you just get up, my dad was a great example of that. As kids, well, especially myself, I didn't want to ask him to help sometimes, because the minute you asked him to do something, he would get up and go do it. And he said it's because he didn't want to forget it, but he also just wanted to get it done. And he was a brilliant man, seriously. He has a land formation named after him in the Antarctic. But he did that with every part of his life. If he was at work and someone asked him something, he would finish what he was doing, but then he would immediately start what they had asked him to do. And I think that's a key for students. At the beginning of the semester, we're almost out of time, but at the beginning of the semester, go through all the syllabuses, all the assignments, and put them on a piece of paper where you can see it. Don't keep flipping back and forth between Blackboard and teachers and everything. Have a plan. And when you have that plan, it just kind of all falls into place, or it should. Not to be overwhelmed by everything, but to define it and dissect it kind of. And this week I can do this, next week I can do this, and the next week, and I've got it under control. Some people actually put up sticky notes, and the minute they're done, they check it off and throw the sticky note away or put it in the notebook, which you never remember to open. But find a way that works for you. I know authors do that too. They plan out their chapters by putting all these notes, note cards, sticky notes, something on the wall or on a blackboard or something, and they can rearrange them. But then when they go to do that chapter, they've already got most of it done. Hopefully that will help. Just pushing ourselves to do it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, if not, then looks like we have reached the end of our scheduled time for today's workshop. Thank you all for joining, and I would like to thank Carolyn for her time. It was very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come and share this information with you.
We would love to do more of this in the future.
Oh, that'd be fun. I like doing stuff because what it does is it helps me do more research.
Yeah, in fact, looks like a lot of people are interested in this sort of workshops.
Fun. It can be fun. All right, so if you get off, can you leave it open for just a little bit till I talk to Said?
Yeah, sure. I will make you a host and
Oh, perfect, okay. And always, my email address is cgray@ualr.edu. So if anybody does have questions, they can always email me too. So.